The Halos tried to win 8 in a row, but the bullpen reminded us of why we can't have nice things, Jonathan. And how different would a June and July at 500 have affected the Halos and their record this season? And we are going to share one stat that's going to prove that Shohei Ohtani is the MVP. Let's get into it. You're Locked On with Mike and John, and this is Locked On Angels.
You are Locked On Angels, your daily Los Angeles Angels podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And we thank you for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts, and you can give us a rate and a review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. It helps all of the Angel fans find Locked On Angels. And if you're watching on YouTube, you can like, you can comment, you can subscribe, and click the bell to be notified every time a new episode drops.
Thanks for joining us for this edition of Locked On Angels, where it's your team every day. You've got the Frisch Brothers, a.k.a. the Super Halo Bros, here with you. My name is John, and that's my brother Mike.
And my name is Mike, and that's my brother John. And John, I hate extra innings.
Me too.
Terrible.
I hate Angels Blowpen, Mike. You thought you could get away without finishing the season without the Blowpen, but nope, They reared their ugly head and cost Patrick Sandoval a win on the mound. Ridiculous. This is why you don't trust wins and losses when you're looking at how good a player is, because you never
Sandoval
know
should have
what's
27 wins this season because of that bullpen, right?
Seriously.
Good grief. So I hate extra innings. I hate Oakland. I hate the stupid drum in Oakland.
You do?
I hate late night games. I hate this season. Like I could go on forever.
That's segment one. What do you hate?
Yeah, exactly. That should be a segment, right?
Well, why don't you breathe a little bit? Breathe in, breathe out, deep breaths. There you go.
Okay, here we go.
Okay, so the Angels lost this one in extras 5-4, and it was not because there was bad starting pitching, but bad relief pitching. And Mike, just the day after we talk about how we feel like Phil Nevin has done a pretty good job, he leaves Quijada in there for like 86 years and 86 innings. It's like, what are you doing, man? Go to somebody else. Obviously he doesn't have it. Obviously he can't locate. Obviously all he has is 2 pitches. You used him to get through the inning. Why'd you bring him back out for the 9th? And then he brings in Aaron Poop and he poops the bed. Good grief, man. So listen, you
need to calm down.
I know. I'm getting verklempt. Listen, we're going for our 8th straight win. Unfortunately, we didn't get it, but it was a 7 game win streak. Can't even talk. I'm so flustered. Yeah. And the franchise record is 11 games in 1964. And you know what? I'm glad we didn't get to 8 consecutive wins, because the last time we did, I believe, was 2014 when we made the playoffs. So we don't deserve nice things this season.
No. It would have been interesting to we won't have enough games to get to 11 wins, but wouldn't it have been interesting to lose as many games as we did in a row earlier this season, and then to actually tie the franchise record of wins in a row. This is going to be, we've said it multiple times, this is going to be one of those seasons. We're going to go look at the stat sheet and we're going to go, how in the heck did we not finish in the playoffs, right? Yeah. We're going to be like so flabbergasted.
We're going to see, 3rd place. That's not that bad.
Right. And then we're going to have to replay all of the podcasts from this season. John, you mentioned Sandoval pitching really, really well. 5 innings, 5 hits. I'm sorry, 6 innings, 5 hits, and 6 Ks. Yeah. And he threw 97 pitches. So this was a really good game by Sandoval, which if there is a positive, he's the positive. He's the guy that we can hang on to and say, what a great way to finish the season. Yeah, now it does leave a bad taste in his mouth, but
a 2.91 ERA for Sandoval is how he finished this season. So
wow, that's
fantastic.
Awesome. That's awesome.
Actually, Angels win on Twitter. They posted a great stat. This is the first time since 2014 we've had pitchers, 4 pitchers finish with over 20 starts and the ERAs that they have. So we have a solid rotation on our hands.
Again, the stat sheet's going to tick us off in 10 years. We're going to go, how did they do this, right? Here's a couple of things that I liked about last night's game, Johnny. I liked Soto leading off. He had 2 hits and a run scored. I liked Rendon back in the game. He had a really smooth play on defense at third base. I like Joe Adell with 2 RBIs. He has a really great swing And our buddy Jared Timms actually did a side-by-side of Joe in April and then Joe recently. So we're going to do a segment on that coming up soon. But I love that he's making the adjustments, and he got a really great hit to knock in 2 runs. And you're right, this game looked really good for a long time, and then the bullpen just decided to completely fall apart.
Yeah, absolutely. Rendon looked like he was getting his feet under him again. He had a couple of offline throws there, but also some great plays as well. He struck out twice, and he was trying to hit something the other way, you could tell. And so I think he's just going to need a few more reps. Obviously, he's probably just going to play tomorrow, and I think that they said he was going to take the day off Wednesday, which is fine. I'm just glad that suspension is out of the way, and so we don't have to worry about that coming into next season. So he'll have a full and healthy off season and come back into spring training. Yeah, I love this lineup. I love seeing Soto at the top. I was like, oh, why'd you move him? And then I realized that's a pretty good bat to have there at the top. I still contend, Mike, I feel like David Fletcher succeeds the most when he's number 1. That's just me. And maybe I got to dive into the stats a little bit more on that and just see how he's performed at 1 and at 9 and see how those compare. But I didn't not like Soto at the top. I liked him there, and it was good lineup construction. Soto, Trout, Shohei, Ward, Rendon, and then later Rengifo. Great top 5. I love that. And then you have Fletch at the bottom to kind of spread things out a little bit more. And how about Ohtani, man? That guy moves behind the plate. There was a moment where Patrick Sandoval stumbled on his delivery. Because there were runners on base, he actually had to throw the ball. Otherwise, it would have been a balk. And Ohtani slides like Trey Turner style, slides over and catches the pitch behind the hitter. And even the hitter was like, what just happened? And there was a couple of other plays where he was catching some outside pitches. And man, don't take for granted a young 22-year-old who can move around like that behind the plate. Man, that guy is just all over the place, and he does it so effortlessly, and I really love seeing that. So I felt like he called a good game behind the plate and really caught well behind the plate as well.
Speaking of future segments, we're actually going to talk about Ohtani on tomorrow's show. The Mets called up their number 1 prospect, and he's the number 1 prospect in all of baseball. He's a catcher, and their stats actually are pretty comparable. So we're going to talk about that, another tease for a future show. But I really like Logan Ohtani behind the plate, and I like his bat, and he really seems to be tracking the ball well. He drew a walk, and it's really going to be the defensive side that I think a lot of us are going to be celebrating because, again, throwing it back to the Molina brothers, it feels like we've got Benji behind the plate again, right? It feels like we've got somebody we can be confident in, but also somebody that isn't a hole in the lineup, like say like a Jeff Mathis was for so many years for us, right? And even Stassi this year has really been a hole in the lineup. And to have Ohtani in there and you have confidence, he's going to make contact. He's going to have great situational hitting. And he's also going to manage this pitching staff really, really well. And he managed Sandoval really well. And I know the A's have 102 losses and they're not a great team, but I think Sandoval's success last night was really contingent on the game that Ohtani was going to call for him. And so they look like a really great battery.
The A's have plenty of guys who can get our goat on that team. Seth Brown and Sean Murphy, those guys, Shea Langoliers can hit bombs. So they're going to be right back in the next 2 years. I imagine there'll be a problem once again because they're going to have so many great solid prospects evolve into everyday players, which is what the A's constantly do. So all of that to say, I think Patrick Sandoval finished the season on a high note. I know he didn't get the W. He should have got that W. But you know what? Wins and losses are ridiculous in this day and age. You can look at his other stats and see how great of a pitcher he's been. Getting swings and misses, mixing the changeup in there and getting guys to swing through that. Patrick Sandoval is going to be an important piece of this rotation moving forward. I'm excited for Angels pitching for once in my life, or at least in the last 10 years for a change.
Well, coming up on Locked On Angels, we're going to give you one stat that proves that Ohtani is the MVP, even on a bad team. But first, Locked On Angels is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline.net is your number one source for all football betting info this season. You can find all the latest player developments, team matchups, news, podcast, and in-depth articles and analysis on every game that you can find. And as always, BetOnline remains your continued source for all your sport wagering information with live betting and up-to-the-minute scores for every sport out there. They're the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite games and events, including baseball, MMA, boxing, and golf. You can head to their website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and actions. BetOnline is where the game starts.
We want to thank you for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. And alert, we have just 2 more days to get in our survey, our 2022 Angels player survey. We want to hear from you, and we want to know how you would grade each member of the Angels roster 1 to 5, and leave some comments along the way. Of course, the link to that survey is in the episode description on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. You can find it there. And Wednesday will be the last day, and then we will share those grades on Friday's episode.
Well, Locked On Angel fan Andrew, who's from Angels Top Plays, he's been on the show before. He's a great friend, and he tweeted out something pretty interesting, John. He shared the records that the Angels had for each month. So I'm going to read through the records, and then let's have a conversation about this. In April, the Angels got our hopes really high, and they were 14-8 to finish that month. And so we thought we're going to the World Series and then Walt Disney World. And then in May, we were 2 games under 500, 13-15, but we were still looking good, right? And then June hit, and that's when the losing streak started taking place. We were 10-18. Then July, we were 6-18. And then in August, we rebounded pretty well. We were 14-15. And then September, we were 2 games over 500. Now, Andrew pointed this out, and here's where I want to have a bit of a discussion. If the Angels went 500 in June and July, right now they would be 83-76 and 3 games out of a playoff spot. So that was when he tweeted this just a couple of days ago. So we would be in playoff contention right now if we just finished at 500 in those months, John. So again, this is going to be really frustrating when we look back at this season. But it really brought up some interesting questions. And so I'm going to fire all 3 questions at you, and then we can have a discussion here. So if this was our position right now, we were 3 games out of a wild card spot. If we were 83-76 right now, what would happen to our team? So here's 3 questions. Would this have been considered a successful season for the Angels? Would Joe Maddon still be the manager? And would Levon Soto be leading off in a game against the Oakland Athletics and playing at short for us? So why don't you hit the first question? Would you have considered this, if we were 3 games out of a wild card spot right now, would you have considered this a successful Halo season?
It's got to be playoffs for me. I understand that we've been under 500 for the longest time, the last 7 years, and including this year. Since 2016. I understand that having a winning record would be fantastic, but the fact is this: there was another wild card spot opened up other than 2020 when there were 16 playoff positions. This has been the best opportunity for the Angels to get into the playoffs, or at least the wild card, and they didn't do it. And for me, I think moving forward, it's got to be playoffs. As long as the structure stays the same, it's got to be playoffs to be a successful season, in my opinion. What about you?
I absolutely agree. I think it's playoffs or bust. And obviously you want to go further in the playoffs than just actually getting there. But I think for this team, because it's been so long, I think it's playoffs or bust. So this would have been an exciting season to watch. And because we've been playing really well in the last 7 to 8 to 9 games, it would have been awesome to be in contention and watching the games and being excited about like an extra inning. We have to win this, right?
Well, consider this. I know it says we'd be 83-76, but some of the losses in June and July, pointing out what Andrew was talking about, some of those losses were against guys who are in the playoffs right now. The Mariners, the Rays, and the Blue Jays, right? Like some of those losses came against those teams. So if we had gone 500 during those months, there would have been more wins against more of those teams. And so I imagine the playoff spot would be a lot closer than what we'd be sitting at in this hypothetical situation. I think that we'd actually be in contention because we'd have more games up on teams like the Mariners or the Rays or the Blue Jays, that sort of thing.
Yeah, that's a great point. Okay, so question number 2 was, would Joe Maddon still be the manager of this team if we were right here, almost in playoff contention, 3 games out?
Yeah, because 4-8 you don't get fired for 4-8. You get fired for 0-12. And the fact is he was making a lot of decisions that we found frustrating as fans. And apparently Perry Manassian found frustrating because since then, Joe's gone on the record to say, well, Perry wanted to talk to me about bullpen usage and da-da-da-da-da. And it's like, well, of course he did, because
you were
yes, John and Mike wanted to as well.
Yeah.
Joe. So I think he still would be the manager because there wouldn't be any reason to fire somebody over 4-8, right?
Yeah.
0-12 when he got fired, and eventually I know it became 0-14. But yeah, I think he would still have his job at this point. Not sure he'd be back next season, but probably still the manager this season.
Yeah, and that's where I was going to take it. 2 things. 1, if he was still the manager, we would have a lot of really great content, and we would be really, really frustrated, right? So, 2nd, I don't think he would have made it to the next season. I think he would have been let go at the end of the season, and I think they would have announced that really
his contract
fast.
was up this season, so they just would have said, "Yeah, we're done."
Thanks, but no thanks, Joe. Right? Okay, and then now Livan Soto is the name that kind of came to mind, but you made a really good point. If Joe Maddon was still the manager, I'm wondering what would happen with like Jose Suarez, and I'm wondering what would happen with some of our younger guys, right? And so we can talk about Livan Soto first, but then feel free to expound on that. But would we have seen Livan Soto in the majors, Johnny, if we were really close to this wild card, which means maybe that we did stay healthy, which means that we were in contention? Would Livan Soto be doing what he's doing right now if we were this close?
I think so. I think Andrew Velasquez hurts his knee regardless in this hypothetical situation.
Yeah.
So you're going to need somebody to play shortstop. And I mean, look at what the Mets did. They brought up their catcher, their top prospect, and they're trying to get into the playoffs as well. So yeah, I think Livan would still have had an impact down the stretch, especially if Velasquez got hurt and they still needed that middle infielder, which they did. And so he was next in line, right? I mean, I don't know. They maybe they would have done a Keen Wong situation or something like that.
Gross.
But I'm pretty sure that Perry Manassian would have said, "Hey, you know what? We're bringing this kid up, and he's going to be on your roster."
Yeah, I am really curious as to what would have happened with like a Soto and other young players, because Joe just didn't seem like he had a handle on how to manage those guys. He would yank Suarez really quick, and his bullpen usage was terrible. And so I wonder if Soto would be as successful if Maddon was his manager. He seems like a great kid. He seems like he knows what he's doing, handles the bat, plays really great defense. And maybe he would have fit right into what Joe Maddon wanted to do.
I think so.
But Phil Nevin does have this ability to really fire up the young guys and really give them a lot of confidence. And so I'd be curious to see what would have happened. I wouldn't want it to happen, but I'd be curious to see what kind of effect Joe would have had on a Livan Soto. But man, it's so interesting, just little tweaks, how things could have gone in a different direction. If we just finished at 500 in June and July, we would be right in the mix right now, probably eliminated because we lost the game last night, but we would be right,
we'd be
right
much
in the
more
mix,
frustrated.
Right? Yes. And I think the thing that I want as an Angel fan is, yes, I want playoffs, but to be in the mix, there's something about being in the mix, right?
Yeah.
There's something about being in there and knowing that you have at least an opportunity. What was it, John? Was it 2015 when we were in the mix at the end, and
the very last game?
Yeah, we had to sweep the Rangers in order to get in. And so I remember watching those games and being like, palms are sweaty, mom spaghetti. I was really nervous about that. So that's kind of like, I think that's what a lot of us fans actually miss. Yes, we want to get to the playoffs. Yes, we want to win the World Series. But to know that you have a chance, we just want to just give us a chance. You're telling me there's a chance. That's all that we want, right?
Well, we're now tied with the Tigers for the longest playoff drought in terms of appearance.
Hooray.
And well, you know what? Good. I think that this needs to light a fire under their butts, because, Mike, it's ridiculous that it's come to this. We haven't been able to do it since 2014, when we had a winning season in 2015. We had all the opportunity in the world in 2020, and we had even more opportunity this season. I understand we had injuries. You don't have to tell me everything that went wrong this season,
right?
But we didn't have the proper pieces in place. And honestly, it seems so easy. Like, when somebody says, "Hey, what's wrong with this thing?" Or like the TV isn't working, and you go, "Oh, you just got to hit the button." And, "Oh, thanks for fixing that for me." That's how it feels with the Angels. Like, what's wrong with this team? "Oh, you just gotta turn this knob here, and you just gotta and it's fixed. There you go. It wasn't that hard." And that's really what it feels like with this team. Get yourself some starting pitching, get some bullpen help, get a left fielder, probably get a middle infielder. We're kind of torn on that because of Soto, but it's so easy. Anybody could do it. It's like, stop trying to put the square peg in the round hole and do things way more complicated than you need to. All you need is like 3 or 4 pieces and you're in the playoffs.
Rant over. Johnny, speaking of making things look easy, Shohei Ohtani does that.
Well done.
Every time he's out on the mound, right?
Yes.
And so I want to share a stat with you, and then let's have a conversation here about the MVP, Shohei Ohtani.
I'm ready
All right,
for
so
this.
he's starting on Wednesday, and he has a chance to win his 16th game, which is great. He's 15-8 right now, and as of this recording, the Angels are terrible and under 500. But here's what's really interesting about Shohei. The Angels have won 16 of Ohtani's starts, and they have lost 11 of those starts. He's 15-8. They're 16-11. In Angel wins, Johnny, Ohtani has an ERA of 0.69.
When he wins?
0.69. Like,
nice.
What an incredible stat, first of all. Like, not even giving up a run a game, an earned run a game.
That's 3/4 of a person.
Right. And when he's at the plate, he's creating 1.3 runs per game in the games that he is winning. So not only is he shutting down their offense, but he's actually bringing some offense. And so here's the stat that I saw and went, okay, this is proof that Shohei Ohtani, even if he's on a losing team, has to be the MVP. Okay. So when he starts, the Angels have a 96 win pace.
Wow.
When he starts.
When he
doesn't pitch, the Halos have a 68 win pace.
Dang.
I mean, WAR doesn't measure that, right? That's almost a 30 win swing when Shohei is on the mound. This isn't even talking about him at the plate. When he's on the mound, which is why sign that guy. He's your ace. He's the guy we've been waiting for. He's our Jared Weaver, our John Lackey. He's the guy that we've been longing for years. Stop looking at Garrett Cole and everybody else. It's Shohei freaking Ohtani. All right. So sign that guy. Here's my question to you, John. If Ohtani does this every season, let's say he does this for the next 4 or 5 seasons, this is just average Shohei Ohtani, right? This is what he does. Should he be the MVP every season?
It's got to be that way. I mean, if his average is constantly elite like this, then yes. I mean, it makes sense. He's obviously the most valuable player, considering the fact the Angels win 28 more games when he starts versus when he doesn't. Good grief. And you're right. That's something that WAR cannot comprehend, does not factor in, and it's not built for Shohei Ohtani. It was never meant to measure somebody like Shohei Ohtani. No. So the fact is, I think he does this every year. He gets MVP. And look, we've seen bad Shohei seasons. 2020 was his worst offensive season. In 2018, he was a pretty good rookie pitcher. Sure. But he had to quit halfway through because of his arm. He's not winning MVP in 18, 19, or 20. Right. He's winning it in 21 and 22 because he's doing both things very, very extraordinarily well. Right. And at a level nobody's ever done it before. Let's just pause for a second. Forget the history that he's making. Forget the fact that he is the only two-way player in the league and is doing what he's doing. The fact is, he's had bad seasons. And if you took bad hitting from one season and bad pitching from another season and you smushed them together, that could actually happen. That is a possibility that could happen to Shohei Ohtani. But when you do things at an elite level like he's doing, Mike, he's a better hitter than last year. He doesn't have as many bombs, but he's consistently a better hitter. Right. He's a much better pitcher this season, going into double-digit wins.
He even said that.
He was unanimous last season. I don't know how you can't be at least unanimous again. I understand Aaron Judge has a pretty good case, but baseball fans fall in love with things like the Triple Crown. Yeah. When you look at like Miguel Cabrera's MVP season versus Mike Trout, Trout had, I think, 5 more WAR than Miggy Cabrera that season, at least 3, if off the top of my head. But everybody fell in love with records and Triple Crowns. Oh, it hasn't happened in 60 years. Well, big deal. This hasn't happened in the history of ever.
Yeah. Listen,
so
couple thoughts.
That's my opinion.
Couple thoughts. First of all, if ESPN and other sports networks do the cut-in when football is on or college football is on to see Judge at the plate, then people aren't going to vote for him because people are hating that. They hate that. They're like, what are you cutting in on my Michigan-Iowa game, right?
Well,
or my Niner Ram game.
That would be
so
else.
If they, you know what, keep doing that. Just keep doing that, and that'll make everybody mad. Second thing, Babe Ruth, the Sultan of SWAT himself, said he didn't think anybody could keep up with the pitching and the hitting like he was doing. He said it would be remarkable, almost impossible for somebody to do that.
Yeah.
And then Shohei Ohtani showed up on the scene and said, I got you, babe. And he decided that he was going to do that. And you make a really great point that Shohei has had bad seasons and he wasn't in the voting for MVP because he had a mediocre or bad season as a pitcher or as a hitter, right?
He's certainly capable of having a bad season, and he hasn't for 2 years.
Right. And this season, he has really put together a great offensive performance. His OPS was stronger last year because he had a stronger slugging percentage because he had more home runs, but he's more of a complete hitter this year with his average almost at 280, right? And he's got, an 18-game hitting streak right now. And so wouldn't it be like Shohei Ohtani to break Joe DiMaggio's hitting streak of 56 games in a row, right? Like, I could see him doing that. And then people would still find reasons to say, well, Aaron Judge plays center field and right field. And so I just think that this one stat with Shohei Ohtani giving the Angels almost 30 more wins when he's on the mound. Yeah. They're on a 96 win pace. Is just remarkable. And I didn't even look up Aaron Judge's stats because there wasn't any stats that were comparable to this stat when it came to Shohei Ohtani. And so here's the thing. Like, the guy's the MVP. All high fives to Aaron Judge. But again, I'm going to double down and say that this guy should be the MVP. He should get everybody's vote.
Mike, a little behind the scenes. It is October 3rd as we're recording this, so I'm going to do a Mean Girls reference. The limit does not exist for Shohei Ohtani.
Well, thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen today. Now make your second listen to Locked On MLB podcast with MLB expert Paul Francis Sullivan. He's bringing humor, passion, and his unique perspective on every team and the biggest stories from around the league. You can follow the #1 daily league-wide podcast, Locked On MLB, on the Odyssey app, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hey, be sure to give us a follow on Twitter at Locked On Angels. And of course, you can reach us on Twitter and Instagram at Super Halo Bros. Getting a lot of fun conversation and messages going over on Twitter and Instagram. So please get at us on social media. Mike, what do we have on deck for tomorrow's show?
We're going to talk about that money. Trout, Ohtani, and Rendon are going to take up about $105 million in salary next season. Baby. So what should be our fan expectations of what the Angels will do and how much money they will spend on other players? We're going to talk a bit about that tomorrow on Locked On Angels.
Looking forward to that conversation. We hope that you'll join us again. Until then, my name is John, and that's my brother Mike.
And my name is Mike, and that's my brother John.
That's going to do it for this edition of Locked On Angels, and we will see you tomorrow.